My name is Junia Bramhall. I am 43. In April, my brother got engaged. At the dinner, my mother went around the table and gave every person on it a name and a reason to be there. The fiancé's aunt, who drove up from Tulsa. The neighbor who lends out his ladder. A cousin's boyfriend, who sells insurance. 26 place cards, and she got to 25. A woman by the breadbasket looked at the burn holes in my sleeve and asked who I was. "She is nobody you need to place," my mother said, smiling at the woman and not at me. Then she picked up the card with my name on it and set it at the far end, past the corner, where the table stops being a table. I sat where she put me. There was a folder open by the breadbasket with a college's name on the front. My mother is the one who asked for it to be brought. Welcome back to Porch Stories, where the woman a room was told not to place is the one a dead woman already wrote down. $318,547 went out of my grandmother's estate 9 years ago, in one line, with my signature under it. The most I have ever had in a bank at one time is $3,800, and that was the week I sold a truck. I teach welding at a community college, 9 months a year, 14 booths, a roll-up door open from May to September. Hit subscribe and stay with me, because my mother had one half of that sentence in her handbag all night and she is the one who handed it across the table. And in the comments, when did somebody last say your name out loud in a room where they did not have to? Let me take you back 12 years, to a set of church steps and a woman in a spring coat who did all the introducing. My grandmother was Junia Bramhall, my father's mother. That spring, the church out on the state road put in new front steps, and the handrail on the left side of them was mine. 2 Saturdays in the shop, out of pipe a man in the congregation paid for, and I ground the weld smooth underneath, because underneath is where a hand goes. There was a little thing after the service to say thank you. 35 people on the new concrete with paper cups. My mother did the thanking. My mother has always done the thanking. She thanked the man who paid for the pipe and said his name and where his shop is. She thanked the pastor's wife for the coffee, by name. She thanked the 2 men who mixed the concrete, both names, with a joke about one of them that got a laugh. 7 people in 90 seconds, and every one of them stood a little straighter when she got to them. Somebody's husband put his hand on the rail and asked who had done the welding. My mother said, "Oh, we had somebody come out. I was 4 feet away, with the burn holes in my sleeve." Then a woman gathered them on the top step for a picture the pastor, my mother, the man who paid for the pipe, their hands along my rail. My grandmother was down on the 2nd step, holding on with both of hers, because her knees were bad by then. She was 74 that spring. She watched that picture get taken. Then she looked at the side of my mother's face for a long time, and then at me. 2 weeks later, she called a lawyer's office over the feed store in town and made an appointment. She made it herself and did not tell anybody until it was made. Guthrie Prentice is a lawyer, and he has written wills in that county for a long time. He has one of those voices that runs at the same speed no matter what he is telling you. He came around from behind his desk because she would not sit down, and then neither of them sat down, so I stood too. She was there to name an executor. I was 31 and did not know what one was. He explained it to us both with his hands. An executor pays the bills, a dead person leaves, and hands out what is left in the order the will says. And then, he said, you write 1 page. He held a flat hand up to show the size of it. Every dollar that goes out of an estate goes on that page with the date beside it and the name of whoever got it. It is called the final accounting. You sign it and you file it at the courthouse, and it stays in the file. My grandmother asked him who is allowed to read it. Anybody, he said. Anybody who walks in and asks for it. It is a public file. There is a counter and a window and posted hours. She looked at me when he said that, not at him. I want it that way, she said. I thought she meant she wanted it done properly, the way she wanted her hedge done properly and her fence line straight. It was 12 years before I understood that she came in there with a question and built everything after it on the answer. Her house smelled like scorched cotton and cold coffee, which is ironing in mornings, and I have never once gone past an open laundry room without turning my head. Junia Bramhall cleaned houses until she was 50 and then ran the dish line at the high school kitchen for 21 years. Her husband worked for the railroad and died at 58. A life insurance check came in the spring of 1992. She opened a savings account with it and then treated that account the way other people treat a grave. You did not go in there. You did not say the number out loud. Twice a year she took the passbook out of the drawer with the batteries in it, looked at it, and put it back. A paid-off house. A garden that fed 4 families. And in that account, $318,547. When I was 17, she sold her sewing machine for $40 to buy me a welding hood. $40, cash, for a singer with a bad foot pedal, to a woman 2 streets over who wanted it for quilting. She had $318,547 in a passbook in the next room while she counted that money out on the kitchen table. The hood was secondhand, and the lens had a crack across the left side, low, near the bottom edge. You cannot fix that. You learn to hold your head half an inch over and look through the good part, and after about 3 weeks, you stop knowing you are doing it. I asked her, years later, why she had not just gone to the bank. She was snapping beans. She did not look up. That money is not for us, she said. I did not ask what it was for. It is not a question I can go back and ask. My trade has one rule in it that matters here. A weld is a joint you cannot see inside of. All the strength of it is in a place nobody will look at again once the building is up. So the trade grew a second half. Every seam that matters gets a number, and a stranger you did not hire comes and stamps a page saying what he found. The metal is the work. The page outlives the work. I have never once had to argue with an inspector about whether a weld was good. He looks, he writes. That is the end of it. I was 22 the first time I understood what that meant. I sat in the lot afterward, with both hands still up on the wheel. It was the first system I had ever been inside where being right was enough. That is the job. Everything after this is a family, and families do not have inspectors. The thing I carry is a form box. A form box is a clipboard with a lid on it. Aluminum, hinged along the top, as wide across as a sheet of typing paper and 2 fingers deep. Mine has spatter burns down the front from a bench I should not have set it on. The latch quit catching about a decade ago, so there is a length of inner tube around the middle to hold it shut. My initials are scratched in the corner with a scribe. I have had it since I was 22. It holds test papers, procedure sheets, a stub pencil, and a letter I have never been able to read all the way to the end. It goes in the truck, it goes to the shop. It sat against my left boot all night at my brother's engagement dinner. There is a brass plate outside the tool crib at the college, no bigger than a playing card, screwed into the block wall at chest height. It has the name of a fund on it and nothing else. I have walked past it 4 or 5 times a day for 9 years, and never once stopped in front of it with another person standing there. The student I need you to know about is 19, and her name is Lark. 2nd semester. Structural beams and plate, the kind of welding that holds a building up. Good hands, no confidence. Works 4 to midnight at a plant that makes cattle panels, and comes to my 8 o'clock with her hair still wet. In February, she started ducking her chin when she ran a bead, tipping her whole head sideways like she was listening to the floor. I watched that for a week. Then I walked down to her booth and asked to see her hood. She held onto it for a second before she handed it over. 19 years old, and she already knows what it means when somebody asks to look at your equipment. There is a crack across the lens, low, near the bottom edge. She has run tape along the split so the light does not come through, and the tape takes another 1/4 inch off the bottom of what she can see, so she cannot see her own puddle. The puddle is the little bright pool of melted steel that a weld is actually made out of. It is the one thing in this trade you watch every second you work. She has been going by feel and by sound, and doing a passable job, which is the worst thing that could happen to her, because passable does not pass. I handed it back and told her the tape was a good fix. That is what I said. A new hood is $300. Lark has a car payment and a boy who is 4. I have thought about buying it. You cannot. Do that once in a room with 14 booths, and you have told 13 other people what you think of them. And the one you bought it for stops being a welder in that room. She starts being the girl somebody bought a hood for. A girl who cannot see the puddle does not pass the test in April. A girl who does not pass in April goes back to the cattle panel plant at $12 an hour. I have watched that door swing shut on enough of them. It does not open again from the inside. There is a fund at Alderbrook Community College, where I teach. Alderbrook is 3 campuses on one budget. Mine out on the highway, one in town, one over in Kettleman. What that fund buys is hoods. It has been buying them every August for 9 years. Tools and tuition, $2,200 at a time. And $2,200 is a hood, a jacket, boots, gloves, and a semester with the fees on it. In February, I put the application in Lark's hand, told her the deadline, and said nothing at all about the name at the top of it. I have been doing that for 9 years. The fund is called the Junia Bramhall Tools and Tuition Fund. And for 9 years, my mother has been telling this county that I emptied my grandmother's account before the body was cold. Were you ever the one your family agreed not to explain to strangers? Say so in the comments. And stay with me, because a bank slip comes out of a handbag at that supper club, and my mother puts it straight into the hands of the only woman there who could read the other half. She died on a Sunday in October, in the garden, between the tomatoes and the fence, with the hose still running. 77. The neighbor found her because he heard water. The funeral was that Tuesday. My mother ran it, and my mother was good at it. She stood at the door of the church and gave every person who came in a name and a reason to be there. Warm, quick. She never once got one wrong. People said afterward that she held that family together. She did. She has always been able to do that. It is the only thing I have ever envied her. The funeral home had 1 family car and it holds 6. The director came in off the lot and asked who would be riding out. My mother counted them for him on her fingers, out loud, the way you count chairs. My father, herself, my brother, my aunt, by marriage and her too, that is 6. Then she said, and my daughter has her truck. I did have my truck. That is the thing about her sentences. There is never anything in one you can stand up and correct. The director stood there a moment with that door open, and nobody left to put in it. Then he shut it, and I followed that car out to the cemetery by myself, with my welding jacket on the seat beside me, where it lives. My father stood beside her with his hands folded. He is the kind of quiet that people mistake for depth. He is Novella's son, and he cried in the car and not in the church. And in 9 years he has said 4 sentences to me about any of this. On the Thursday of the week after that, Guthrie Prentice read the will in his office over the feed store. He had set out 5 chairs. I was the only one who came. The house went to my father. It says so on the 2nd page, and the letter telling him so went out in the mail that afternoon. Because he was not there to be told, I was the executor. I had signed a form standing up in that same room 3 years before. 10 days later, I sat at a folding table in the back of the bank on Tarnwick Street with a folder of court letters and closed my grandmother's savings account. The teller was a young man who had never done one before, so he got a supervisor. I signed a withdrawal slip for $318,547. The money went out of her account and into the estate account I had opened the week before, which is what the law says has to happen, 40 minutes, and not one dramatic second in it. I want you to see the slip, because my mother has shown it to more people than I have shown my own wedding pictures. It is a carbon, yellow, going brown along the top edge now. There is a date. There is an account number with the middle digits blocked out. There is the amount, written twice, once in figures and once in my own hand, on the line where a bank makes you spell it out. And at the bottom, there is my name, in my hand, with the word executor after it. A withdrawal slip says money left. It does not have a line on it anywhere for where money went. My mother has been holding up 1/2 of a sentence for 9 years. On the Friday after the funeral, my mother drove to the bank on Tarnwick Street and asked what was in her mother-in-law's savings account. This was before the will was read, before I had any authority at all, before that slip existed. They would not tell her. She was not on the account. She was not the executor. As far as that window was concerned, she was not anybody. A woman behind the glass said some version of, "I'm not able to discuss that with you," and my mother walked back out to her car. Here is what she has said since. In this county, at kitchen tables, and in a church basement, and at a graduation party, Grandma's account was empty by Friday. The bank told my mother nothing on that Friday. Nothing at all. She has been quoting a woman who would not answer her. 3 weeks after that, the closing paperwork went out in a window envelope to the address on the account. The address on the account was my grandmother's house, and my mother was in the middle of that house with a roll of garbage bags. She opened it. The carbon of the slip was in it. I have thought about that envelope more than is good for me. A story with nothing in it dies inside a year. This one had a piece of paper in it. People believe paper. I have built a whole working life on people believing paper, and I cannot even be angry at them for it. The first Christmas after, there was a plate of ham on the counter and 14 people in that house. My mother said it standing in the doorway, in a voice pitched for a joke. I had better not stand too close to her purse. 2 people laughed. My aunt by marriage looked at the floor. My brother looked at me and then looked at the television. That is how it starts. It does not start with a scene. It starts with a joke that has one true thing in it, and then it starts with the true thing without the joke. By the second year, my name was off the group text. Not removed the number, just stopped being added when somebody made a new one. By the third year, my cousin's wedding invitation went to my father's house instead of mine and never got forwarded. I heard about the wedding from the woman who does my tires. In the 5th year, I went to a funeral for a man who had taught my grandmother's Sunday school class. I stood at the back. A woman I did not know leaned in and asked my mother who I was. She was close enough that I could smell her hairspray. "She is nobody you need to place," my mother said. Then she took the woman by the arm and walked her toward the coffee urn. By the 6th year, my father had a stent put in. I found out 7 weeks later from a neighbor at the hardware store. He assumed I knew. He watched my face and then found something to do at the other end of the aisle. That is what it costs. Not one big room where everybody turns around. 7 weeks of not knowing your father was in a hospital. The second week, before any of that, I did the only thing my trade has ever taught me to do. I sent her the paper. I had certified copies made of the will and, when it was filed, of the final accounting, both stamped by the clerk. I put them in a manila envelope with a letter I rewrote 4 times until there was nothing left in it but the facts and the file number. I sent it certified, return receipt requested. It came back. Refused. Unclaimed at the post office for 15 days and then returned to sender, and the sender was me. It is in the shop drawer under my tap and die set, still sealed, the green card stapled to it. My mother's handwriting is across the front, where she wrote one word to the mail carrier. 9 years old and I have never opened it. It stopped being an envelope the day it came back. It is a record now, and what it records is that a woman was handed the answer in her own doorway and would not take delivery. My brother's name is Eldon, and he is 36, and I taught him to read a tape measure standing on my feet. He was 5, and I was 12. He could not get the little marks, so I stood him on my boots, put his hands on the tape with mine on top, and we walked it down the kitchen counter. 1/8, quarter, half. He had it in one afternoon, and for 2 years after that, he measured everything in that house and wrote the numbers on the wall behind the door. I called him in the second year and asked him to read the accounting. I gave him the file number. I told him it is a 15-minute drive from his apartment, and the window is open until 4:30. He said he did not want to get in the middle of it. He said it kindly. He has always been kind. Kind is not the same as anything. It took me a long time to learn that, and I learned it from a man who used to stand on my feet. So for 9 years, this was the arrangement. My mother had a piece of paper that proved money left. I had a piece of paper that proved where it went. Mine sat in a public file with a counter and a window and posted hours, 4 miles from her kitchen. In 9 years, not one person in my family drove there. And every workday I walked past that brass plate and did not say the name on it out loud. Saying it meant saying the rest. And by then, I knew what happens when I say the rest. A rumor keeps no records. A gift keeps 9 years of them. In March, my brother called me on a Tuesday night while I was cleaning a gun. Not that kind. A welding gun, the handle the wire comes out of. I had it apart on a towel on the kitchen table, and I answered with my elbow. He said he was getting married, and that his fiancée's name is Clemmy. He said there was a dinner in April at the supper club out on the county road, the one with the back room, and that he wanted me there. I asked him if she knew. He said, "Mom says it will be fine." That is not what I asked, and we both heard that it was not what I asked, and neither of us said so. He talked for a while about the room and the menu. I put the tip of the gun back on with the phone against my shoulder. I said yes. Of course I said yes. He stood on my feet. The next morning, I drove to the courthouse for a fresh copy of the accounting with a new seal on it. I had decided that one person in my family was going to read it before that dinner. I was going to put it in my brother's hand myself. The probate window is on the 2nd floor, at the end of a hall that smells like floor wax and radiator dust. I would know that smell blindfolded. My grandmother's church basement smelled exactly like it. The deputy clerk is a woman named Winona Seaborn. She was behind that counter before I ever taught a class. There is a chair back there, and she does not use it. She has never once asked anybody why they want a file. I gave her the file number off a card I have carried in my wallet since I was 34. She went and got the jacket. It is a folder the size of a cookie sheet, held shut with cloth tape, and when she set it on the counter, it made a sound like a door. There is a card in a sleeve inside that jacket. Anybody who pulls the file signs it. Date, name, what you asked for. There were 2 lines on it. Both of them were mine, 9 years apart. My own handwriting at the top, from the year I was 34, nothing under it. Then, the empty part of the card, going all the way down. I looked at that card for longer than I want to tell you about. My mother lives 4 miles from that counter. My brother lives closer than that. My father has jury duty in that building. Winona Seaborn watched me look at it, and then she turned the jacket around so it faced me and opened it to the back, where the last page is. "A final accounting is not a family story," she said. "It says what left the estate, on what day, and to whom. It has been sitting in an open file for 9 years waiting for somebody to ask." Then she read it to me, out loud, because I asked her to, and she does it a certain way. The date first, every line, the date, then the amount, then the name. She told me later she started doing that because the dates are what people argue about. She read the date. She read $318,547. Then she read the name. Alderbrook Community College Foundation. That is the college where I teach. That is the block wall my brass plate is screwed to. And I said, out loud, to a woman who had no reason on this earth to care. The fund opened 11 days after that. I have had both of those dates in my head for 9 years. The one on that line, and the one the fund was established on, printed on the front of a report that comes to me every January, 11 days apart. I had never once put them in the same sentence in front of another human being. When I finally did, my ears went hot and my eyes stung, and I had to put both hands flat on that counter. Winona Seaborn let me stand there. She did not say anything kind. She wrote a figure down on a slip of paper and slid it over. $4 a page for the certified copies, she said. And then she tapped the card with one finger. "You're the only name on that, ma'am. Twice. The recorder's office is downstairs in the same building, past the vending machines." I had an hour on the meter, and a part of me that wanted something worse than a page. "You can look up a property on a public terminal by address," I typed in. "My grandmother's house. 2 years after the funeral. My mother and my father took a second mortgage against it. I am going to leave the number out of this. I sat in the parking lot afterward with the truck running and my hands in my lap. I thought about a rented back room with 26 people in it and how little it would take. That was not a small thought. It had a shape. I knew exactly where in the evening I would put it. Then, I turned it around the other way. Her debt is not my evidence. If I read that out in that room, the table stops hearing about a woman who sold a sewing machine for $40. It starts hearing about money again. Who has it? Who owes it? Who is behind? Money is the ground my mother wins on. She has been winning on it for 9 years. Standing up in there with a bigger number is not beating her. It is picking her ground. I printed it anyway. I put it in the form box under the procedure sheets. My hands did that while my head was still arguing. It rode around in my truck for 3 weeks. Now let me give my mother the part of this that is true and does not help her. Cyrilda Vesey married into this family at 20 years old. She came from 2 counties over, from people nobody up here had heard of, and for 6 or 7 years, she was not introduced by her name. She was the Bramhall boys' wife, at the church supper, at the fire department barbecue, at the funerals. People here do that, and they do not think they are doing anything. My grandmother did it too, worse, actually. For years my grandmother called her the girl, and not always out of earshot, and Novella Bramhall was a woman who never once mispronounced the name of a dog. And somewhere in there my mother worked out the thing that has run her life ever since. The person who does the naming in a room is the person who is somebody in it. So she got good at it, better at it than anyone I have ever met. She can walk into a hall with 60 people and hand every one of them a name and a reason to be there and make the room feel held. I can follow that all the way back to the place it started and set my thumb on it. It does not get her to a rented back room at 69 years old with a place card between 2 fingers in front of her son's future wife, saying, "She is nobody you need to place." She had 49 years to decide what to do with what was done to her. In April, she picked it up and used it on her daughter in front of 26 people. In the first year after the funeral, the college foundation sent me 1 page in the mail, 2 paragraphs and a signature line. My family name is on that fund, and I teach in the program it pays for, so I may not sit on the committee that picks the recipients. I may not take part in choosing. I may not speak up for anybody. I signed it at my kitchen table with a shop pencil and mailed it back the same day. My family has always treated what I do as the thing I did instead of something. My mother told a woman at a wedding that I work in a shop, in the tone people save for a diagnosis, and that job is the dirty one. It is the one nobody in my family has ever once asked me a question about. That dirty job is also why there is a page in a public filing cabinet with my name on it. What the page says is that I may not touch $1 of the money I was accused of stealing. Every January, that foundation mails out a report, 1 page, front and back, with the fund's name at the top and the date it was established under it. It lists what the fund paid out that year and to how many people. There are 9 of those reports now, 38 people. 38 hoods, 38 jackets, 38 pairs of boots, and 38 semesters that somebody did not have to sit out. I know 4 of them by sight. One of them put a muffler on my truck 2 winters ago and would not take money for it, and I did not ask why. Before you get any further into thinking I am the reasonable one here, that page I signed had 2 paragraphs on it. It referred to another document by a number, the agreement my grandmother's gift was made under. I signed the sheet in front of me, and I did not ask to see the one it was talking about. Not that year, not any year. For 9 years I have been angry at people who would not drive 4 miles to a counter. The cabinet that agreement lives in is about 30 steps from the vending machine I use every single day. I have walked past it something like 4,000 times. I never once said please to the woman who has the key. Eldon called again at the end of March about what time to get there. Near the end of it, "The way you mention weather," he said. "Mom wants the college people at the dinner." I asked him what college people. He said Clemmy won a scholarship in the fall. He said Mom found out the director of the foundation goes to the same church as somebody. So she has invited her to the dinner for a picture of the family with the college. He laughed. He said, "You know how she is about a picture." I asked him which scholarship. He did not know the name of it. He said, "The tools one. The one that buys your kit." I was in my truck outside the shop with the window down. Somebody was cutting with a torch behind the building. I said something normal to my brother and hung up and sat there. The 9th year of that fund went to the woman my brother is going to marry. My mother invited the executive director of the foundation to a supper club in Kettleman County so she could be photographed with her. She made the call, she picked the night, and she asked for the folder to be brought so it would look official, and she seated me at the end of the table. What I decided in that parking lot is the part of myself I understand the least. I have gone over it every day since, and I still think it was right. It was not going to come out of my mouth. I could have. There was a certified copy with a raised seal on the passenger seat, and I have had the sentence ready for 9 years. I have set it into a windshield, into a mirror. Once into a shop vacuum that was running, so nothing could hear me. $318,547. 11 days, one name. Here is the only thing my job ever taught me that is worth passing on. Nobody believes the person who has something to gain. That is not cruelty. It is how a room works. It is why the man with the stamp is a stranger. Say I had stood up in that back room with my own paper in my own hand and read my own clearing out loud. What that room sees is a woman shouting about herself at her brother's engagement dinner. My mother has the better night. A woman who defends herself at a party is exactly the woman she has been describing for 9 years. The paper does not need my voice. It has never needed my voice. It has needed a mouth with nothing in this for it. So I drove to a dinner with a form box riding down by the pedals and a decision in my chest. Sit down, eat, be pleasant, go home. Lark got her application in on the 19th. I checked that she had signed the back page and did not read the rest of it, because I am not allowed to. I mailed it from town so it would not sit in the campus bin over a weekend. She was still taping the lens. The fresh strip that week was a different color than the old one, and I could not stop looking at it. Now the letter. Guthrie Prentice, the lawyer who wrote the will, handed it to me after the reading, in the hallway outside his office. My name was on the front of it, in my grandmother's handwriting. She gave it to him the same day she signed, 12 years ago, and told him to hold on to it. 5 pages, lined tablet paper, both sides, in pen, folded in thirds so it fits a coat pocket, which is how she folded everything. The fold across page 2 has been opened and closed so many times that it wore through. I have mended it 3 times. Cellophane tape the first time, when I was 34, packing tape the second. Cloth tape the last time, about 4 years ago, because the drawer had nothing else in it. All 3 are still on there. They have gone yellow at 3 different speeds, so they sit in 3 colors on the same crease, like rings on a stump. Anybody who looks can count them and tell you which one went on first. There is a line partway down page 2. I would get to it, and my hands would put the letter back together, and I would notice about 4 seconds later that I had done it. 9 years of that. The paper gave out before I did. Pages 3, 4, and 5 have my grandmother's handwriting on them. I have never read a word of any of them. If you are carrying something you cannot get all the way through, hit subscribe and stay with me. That letter comes out on a shop bench before the night is over, and I read it to you off the page. First, there is a supper club, and a woman with a slip in her handbag, about to put it in the hand of the one person in that county she should have kept it from. The supper club out on the county road has a back room they rent, with a low ceiling and a carpet that has been there since before I was born. There is a floor manager there named Drusilla, gray bob, black cardigan, a pencil behind her ear that she never uses because she does not need to. She had a clipboard by the door with the covers on it. When I came in, she looked down at it, then up at me, and said, "Good evening, Miss Bramhall," and checked something off. That was the first time my name was said out loud in that building, and it was said by a woman who was paid to be there. My brother was at the coat rack. He hugged me. He smelled like new shirt. I had the manila envelope with me, certified copy, raised seal, $4 a page. I had rehearsed a version of it in the truck where I did not make a thing of it, and I did the version I rehearsed. I said, "Here, this is that file number. Read it whenever. Not tonight." He looked at the envelope in my hand and he did not take it. He said, "Junia, just let it be tonight. Whatever it is, it can still be true tomorrow. I would like to tell you I had a good answer." I put it back under my arm and said, "Sure," and we went in. He was right about one thing. That is, what a filed page is, it sits there being true, whether or not anybody in the building has the stomach for it. My brother said the most accurate sentence of the entire night, and he meant it as a way of asking me to hold still. Clemmy came down to the end of the table before anything started. She is 24, good handshake. She has a scar on the back of her left thumb, 1.5 inches long, and I clocked it before I clocked her face. That is a grinder. Everybody who has one has a story about the day they were in a hurry. She sat in the chair beside mine, which nobody had told her to do, and said she had been wanting to meet me. She said Eldon talks about me. She said she is second semester at the Kettleman campus. Pipe. I asked who she has for the overhead test. We spent about 30 seconds on a man we both know who yells at people about route passes. 30 seconds. That was the best part of my night, and it happened before anyone sat down. Then my mother called her back up to the head of the table for a picture, and Clemmy squeezed my shoulder on the way past. Olwen Rushbrook, the executive director of the college foundation, came in at 7:10 with a folder under her arm. 50s, a good coat, the flat, pleasant manner of a woman who spends her working life at other people's tables. She does a thing I have thought about a great deal since. Wherever she sits down, she puts a business card face up on the linen beside her plate. Nobody at that end of a table ever has to ask her who she is. Getting the right name attached to the right money is the whole of her job, and she starts with her own. My mother met her at the door and had her by the elbow inside of a minute. She walked her the whole length of that room, introducing her. Olwen Rushbrook shook 20-some hands and said, "It is nice to meet you 20-some times." The folder went down open beside the bread basket so it would be in the picture. I know what was in it now. That night I knew only what it was for, which was a photograph. The seating was the last thing before dinner. My mother went around that table and gave every person on it a name and a reason to be there. She is good at it, and I want you to believe me about that, because a woman who was bad at it could not have done 9 years of this. The fiancé's aunt, who drove up from Tulsa. The neighbor who lends out his ladder. A cousin's boyfriend who sells insurance. The aunt from Tulsa looked down the table at the burn holes in my sleeve and asked who I was. "She is nobody you need to place," my mother said, smiling at the woman and not at me. It is not a thing she came up with that night. It is a tool she has had a long time, and she keeps it sharp. Then she picked up the card with my name on it and set it at the far end, past the corner, where the table stops being a table. Nobody said anything. People imagine these rooms wrong. Nobody gasps. 25 people find something to look at and the evening keeps going. Because an evening is heavy and nobody wants to be the one who stops it. Drusilla stopped it for about 15 seconds. She came down from the service station with a chair, put it where the card had been, and set a full place in front of it. Water glass, bread plate, napkin folded the same as everybody else's. She did it without looking at my mother or at me, the way you set a table, and went back for the salads. I sat down. I set the form box down against my left boot, where it always goes. The story got told over the salads. It always gets told. The aunt from Tulsa asked how long my mother had been in the county. 49 years, my mother said. She came in as a bride. And then, in the same warm voice, with no change in it anywhere, she said the thing about her mother-in-law's savings, that there had been money, that there had turned out to be none of it left, that the family had had a hard few years over it. Grandma's account was empty by Friday, she said. She did not say my name. She has never once needed my name for that story. She lets the sentence sit, then she lets her eyes go where they go. 25 people follow her eyes, and there I am at the end past the corner with a fork. Clemmy was 4 seats up. She had a piece of bread in her hand and she put it down. That is the moment I want you to keep. Not the card. The card was mine, and I have had 9 years of practice with things that are mine. A 24-year-old woman who has been welding all semester in a hood she did not pay for. At a college, whose name was on the folder by the breadbasket, sitting between her future mother-in-law and a story about a thief, going quiet. Coffee came out around 8:45, and my mother stood up and tapped a glass with a spoon. She wanted the picture. She said a few nice things about Eldon and Clemmy. Then she said we were lucky enough to have the director of the college foundation with us tonight, and would she say a word about Clemmy's award? Her phone was already up in her other hand. Olwen Rushbrook stood and picked up her folder, because a woman who is asked to speak about a fund brings the fund with her. She said the award is called a Tools and Tuition Award. She said it covers a hood, a jacket, boots, gloves, and the semester with the fees. $2,200, and there have been 38 of them. She said the family that established it asked not to be publicized, so the foundation does not put donors in the newsletter or on the website. That is the donor's right, and the college honors it. The cousin's boyfriend was on his 3rd glass of somebody else's wine, with the certificate turned around in front of him, reading it the way people read things at tables. He said, "It says Bramhall on here. Is that not your name?" And there it was, in a rented room with the coffee going cold. 9 years, and a name on a certificate, and a man who sells insurance. My mother did not miss a beat. I have to give her that, she said. That was my husband's mother. She has been gone a long while, and our family has nothing to do with that money. The aunt from Tulsa, a perfectly nice woman who had driven 6 hours, said, "Why not?" And my mother reached down beside her chair and opened her handbag. I said, "Don't." That is one of 2 things I said at that table all night. She took out a soft yellow carbon, folded in quarters for 9 years, gone brown along the top edge. She did not hand it to the aunt from Tulsa. She reached across the corner of the table and put it in the hands of the executive director of the college foundation. "That is my mother-in-law's account," she said. "That is my daughter's signature." It was empty by Friday. Olwen Rushbrook stood there holding it. She did not read it out loud. She turned it toward the light over the service station and held it in both hands, the way you hold a page somebody is going to ask you about later. It went on long enough that Drusilla stopped behind me with the coffee pot and did not pour. Then she said, "Ma'am, I'm going to answer that. You've handed me a bank slip in front of your family and told me the fund I administer was filled out of a theft. I don't get to sit down after that." She laid the slip on the tablecloth. She opened her folder. She said, "The gift agreement for this fund is a public record of a public college. My office will give a copy to anybody who asks for it. In 9 years, nobody has." Then she read. She read the name of the fund, the Novella Bramhall Tools and Tuition Fund. She read the date it was established, which is the 2nd week of December, 9 years ago. She said, line 4 is the amount of the founding gift. $318,547. Then she turned the yellow carbon around with 2 fingers and read the date off the top of it, out loud. The same way a clerk in a courthouse 4 miles from there had read a date to me in March. 11 days, she said. 11 days between this slip and that line. My ears went hot. The room went far away. I pressed both palms down on my own thighs under that table. The way you hold on to something. She said there is one more thing. The donor was required to write a statement of purpose. It goes out with every award letter this fund has ever sent because the donor asked for it that way. And she read my grandmother out loud in a supper club on a county road. I sold a sewing machine for $40 and bought my granddaughter a used hood with a crack across the lens. She learned to see around it. She never once said a word to me about it. This is for the next one who has to see around something. Her name is Junia Bramhall. She is not to sit on the committee, and she is not to be given $1 of it. And that is how I want it. 2 hours before that, in that same room, with a place card between 2 fingers, she is nobody you need to place. And a woman who had been in the ground 9 years put my whole name in a stranger's mouth in front of every person my mother had introduced. Then Olwen Rushbrook turned that page over, because there was writing on the back of it, and she read that too. She said the agreement asks a donor to give a reason for the name on it, and that most people write one line. My grandmother wrote 3. The name on this is to be mine, and not my granddaughter's. There will be talk in this county about where the money came from. If her name is on it, the talk will be about her. Let it say mine, and she will know. That is the plate. That is the brass plate the size of a playing card, screwed into a block wall outside a tool crib. I had walked past it 4 or 5 times a day for 9 years with my mouth shut. I had been reading it wrong the whole time. It is not my grandmother's name up there, instead of nothing. It is my grandmother's name up there instead of mine. Somewhere down the table, a chair leg went across the carpet and stopped. 12 years earlier, standing up in an office over a feed store, my grandmother had asked a lawyer who was allowed to read a final accounting. He told her, anybody. She looked at me and not at him and said, I want it that way. She was not being careful. She was building it. She had spent 40 years in this county watching who gets believed, and she was 74 years old, and she built the whole thing out of paper, a public file with a date on it, a sentence written to be handed to strangers, a name on a wall that was not mine. Then she died and left it sitting there. It sat for 9 years because it needed a mouth, and there was not one. Nobody at that table moved. The aunt from Tulsa had her hand over her mouth. My father was looking at the tablecloth with his jaw working. Eldon had gone the same color as the napkins. There was a certified copy of that same accounting in my coat, 6 feet behind him on a hook. He was the only other person in that room who knew it was there. I had held it out to him at that coat rack 2 hours before, and he had not taken it. He looked at the tablecloth, and he let the room find out from a stranger. Clemmy got up. She went to her bag, over on the window chair, and came back with an envelope, still sealed. She laid it on the linen by Olwyn Rushbrook's hand. She said, This came with my award letter in August. I thought it was a form. She opened it right there with her thumb, and read 4 lines of it silently, and put it down and said, out loud, to nobody in particular, it's the same one. She had been wearing that hood since September. My mother said the last thing anybody said to me that night. You waited 9 years and then picked your brother's engagement dinner to do it. I did not answer her. There was no answer to make. She had just been read a page she could have had for the asking, any weekday between 8 and 4:30. Inside of 10 seconds, she had turned it into a thing I did to her son. I stood up. I lifted the form box off the floor and put it down in front of my mother, on the linen, still shut, the inner tube still around the middle of it. I laid my hand flat on the lid and left it there a second. There is a printout in that box of a mortgage on my grandmother's house with my mother's name on it. It was under the procedure sheets, 4 inches from her water glass, and I did not lift the lid. I am never going to. Leaving it shut is the costliest thing I have ever done with my hands. Then I said the second of the 2 things I said that night. A withdrawal slip says money left. It does not have a line on it for where money went. I picked the box back up. Drusilla was at the coat rack with my coat already off the hook and open. She held it while I got my arms in. Nobody has done that for me since my grandmother died. She said, Good night, Miss Bramhall. Twice in one evening, in a building where my own mother had not used it once. I did not go home. I drove to the shop, let myself in with my key, and turned on the lights over the 3rd bench. The shop at night smells like cold steel and floor sweep, which is quiet and other people's work. It is the only room I have ever been able to think in. I put the form box on the bench and took the inner tube off it. The mortgage printout was where I put it in March. I took it out, did not read it, and dropped it in the barrel where we burned the shop rags. It went up that Saturday. If you think that was easy, I stood there holding it a while first. Then I took out 5 pages of lined tablet paper folded in thirds, with 3 colors of tape across the crease on page 2. Page 1 is the garden and the good pan and who should get the pressure canner. Page 2 starts with the hedge. And then, partway down, in the middle of a paragraph about a hedge, is the line I have never once got past since I was 34. I have not told your mother, and I am not going to. 9 years, every time, right there, and my hands would fold it back up. Because that sentence, with nothing under it, is a woman with a plan sitting in her kitchen deciding to let it land on me. She could have said one sentence to my mother at any Sunday dinner for the last 3 years of her life. 12 words at a table and there is no story, no Friday, no group text, no 7 weeks of not knowing my father had a stent. That night in the shop, I put my thumb on that line and made myself go one further. Here is page 3. She wrote, "I have not told your mother, and I am not going to, because she would not hear it from me, and I am the reason." Page 4 is the reason. My grandmother wrote out, in her own hand, at 74, what she did to my mother. That she called her the girl for 6 years after the wedding. That she knew she was doing it, and did it because a woman had come and taken her son, and she had nowhere to put that. That the first time she used my mother's name in front of company, my mother stopped in the middle of a room and looked at her. She wrote that a woman she did that to for 6 years was never going to take her word about money. So she went and found another mouth. She stood up in an office over a feed store and asked a lawyer who is allowed to read a final accounting. He said, "Anybody." She put the money where the county keeps its records, wrote a sentence to be handed to strangers, and wrote a wall around my name in the same paragraph. And then page 5. Under the last fold, in the last inch, where I would have found it in 4 seconds if I had ever once made it that far. Do not argue with her about this. If she ever wants to know where it went, do not tell her. Take her out to your shop and show her the hoods. I sat on a stool in a cold building close to midnight, and I laughed. And then it turned into the other thing. For 9 years, I did not argue with my mother about this. I sent one envelope in the second week and never sent another. I did not confront her at Christmas. I did not stand up at that dinner and read my own paper into my own defense. I did the thing on page 5 for 9 years without knowing anybody had asked me to. That is not obedience. Calling it obedience would be a warm thing to say and a lie. I did it out of exhaustion and out of pride and because I did not think I could survive being disbelieved in front of everybody one more time. My grandmother wrote that instruction out of mercy. I obeyed it out of fear. It comes to the same 9 years either way, and only one of us chose them. But the instruction was right, and a dead woman was right about my mother 9 years before I was. A rumor keeps no records. A gift keeps 9 years of them. Here is what happened after. The aunt from Tulsa called me on the Sunday and talked for 40 minutes and cried twice, and she has sent me a card on my birthday since. People in this county say my name to me now. At the feed store, at the parts counter, in the pharmacy line. Some of them say it too carefully, the way you handle a thing you dropped once. The pastor's wife called in May about a second rail for the other side of those steps. She asked for me by name. For 9 years, I was nobody you needed to place. Undoing that took a dead woman, a public file, and a stranger with a folder. Count that up, then ask what it would take in your family. My mother has not apologized. At the graduation party in June, in front of her sister, what she said was that it all got said and it got out of hand. Not I said it, it got said. She has been doing that with her voice for as long as I have known her, taking the hands out of a sentence so nothing has to belong to anybody. She has stopped telling the story, not out of shame, as far as I can tell. She has stopped because it does not work anymore, which in her hands is the same thing. Olwen Rushbrook did the part that lasts, and she did it at her desk on a Monday. She changed the rules on that fund. The donor's statement does not go out in an envelope with the award letter now. It is read out loud, by a person, to the recipient, and the recipient signs a line saying it was read to her. A sentence in an envelope, she told me on the phone, is not a delivered sentence. I did not ask her to do that. She did it because a 24-year-old woman opened a sealed envelope at a supper club with her thumb and said, "I thought it was a form." I am still not on that committee. The foundation offered in May, on the grounds that everybody in the county knows the whole thing now. I said no fast enough, that Olwen laughed. Nothing about why I signed that page 9 years ago has changed. My grandmother put that wall up on purpose, and I am not the one who gets to take it down. In May, on a Thursday, my father drove to the courthouse and asked Winona Seaborn, the deputy clerk, for the file. There is a third line on that card now, in his handwriting. He has not said much to me about it. He came by the shop in June with a bag of tomato starts and stood around 20 minutes talking about a truck. He is not going to say it. I am mostly at peace with that now, on Tuesdays. The envelope in the drawer under my tap and die set is still sealed. My mother's handwriting still across the front. I am never going to open that one. It is the only proof I will ever have that on a Tuesday 9 years ago the answer was carried up her steps and put in her hand. Lark, my student with the taped lens, got the award on the 14th of August. Owen Rushbrook handed it to her in the hallway outside the tool crib and read my grandmother's sentence out loud to her off the page. Lark signed the line. I stood about 30 feet off by the vending machine, because I am not permitted any closer than that. She had the new hood on in the shop the next Tuesday, second week of the semester. She struck an arc and ran maybe 4 inches of bead and then stopped and pushed the hood up off her face and looked down at the 4 inches she had just laid and said, "Oh, that is all of it, right there. That is what $318,547 is for. $2,200 at a time." $2,200 makes a sound like a 19-year-old saying, "oh," in an empty shop. It has made that sound 38 times and nobody in my family ever heard it. We do a thing on the first morning of every semester now. Before anybody strikes an arc, before the safety talk, I walk the whole class out into the hallway. We stand in front of a brass plate no bigger than a playing card. I read it out loud. Then I tell them whose name that is, and why it is not mine. That she cleaned houses, that she ran a dish line, that she sold a sewing machine for $40. It takes 4 minutes and some of them are on their phones and I do not care. 9 years I could not say that name, because saying it meant saying the rest. Now I say it first thing, standing up, in front of everybody. A rumor keeps no records. A gift keeps 9 years of them. That's my story. $40, 11 days, and 5 pages of tablet paper with 3 colors of tape on the same crease. Somebody in your family has been telling a story about money for years. You have gone along with it, because nobody wants to be the one who stops the evening. Take 10 minutes this week. An estate has a file. It has a number, a counter, a window, and posted hours. And in most counties, you can call and ask on the telephone. Go and read the page instead of the person. Send this to the woman her family stopped naming out loud, and never once told why. She will know inside the first minute. And tell me in the comments what your family has been sure of for years without ever once looking it up. I read them. If you have not subscribed, do it now, and I will keep telling you these on Tuesdays. That's all of it. Thank you for sitting with me on the porch tonight. I'll see you in the next one.